Let me tell you this. I did not expect this series to pull me here or anywhere close. We started with XRP because I wanted to understand the asset that I held. And somehow that curiosity has dragged us into geopolitics, Africa, humanitarian work, banking rails. And this week, it pulled me into something I would have completely rolled my eyes at 5 years ago: trade finance, which sounds painfully boring. But here's the thought that I couldn't shake. If money is upgrading to new rails, then the systems that move goods probably have to upgrade as well. And that's where this chain comes in. A project called XDC that quietly decided, I don't want to be the casino, I want to be the shipping port. If you're new here, welcome. I use XRP as a lens to understand how money and systems are shifting in real time. And on Fridays, we go exploring. This is Field Trip Friday, and I'm James Harris. So, to be absolutely transparent, the first thing that pulled me into crypto was not the systems, it was the price. Like most people that I'm assuming, I assumed this space was just a new way to get ahead very quickly. But the moment I started looking underneath the hood, learning what utility actually means, why certain assets exist, and how the rails underneath our economy really move, I found myself in a completely different stratosphere. The speculation faded and the infrastructure became the story. And that's why a project like XDC even shows up anywhere on my radar. Not because it's loud, but because it's trying to fix something foundational. So, I think we have to start simple. Think about the game telephone from school. One person whispers a sentence. By the end, by the time it ends, the 10th person is completely wrong or has a totally different narrative. Now, scale that up to global trade. Except the message isn't Nick brought her teddy bear to school. It's what's inside of this container and who owns it. Where is it going? Has it cleared customs? Has the bank approved the paperwork? Right now, the answers to those questions live on paper, on PDFs, or emails, or even internal systems that don't talk to one another. So, at port A, someone fills out a form. At port B, someone retypes it. A bank scans a copy. A freight company updates their own spreadsheet. And somewhere a customs officer is waiting on an attachment that's already outdated. Every time that information gets copied, retyped, or forwarded, the message can change, just like the telephone game. Except now it doesn't end in laughter, it ends in delays. Whole containers sit at ports. Ships get held at sea. Cargo gets rerouted. Businesses eat the cost, and eventually, we as consumers do too. Take something as unserious as potato chips. And actually, potato chips can be very serious sometimes. But a container of chips can get stuck because one field on one document doesn't match another system. Someone typed the wrong date or the wrong code, or the bank didn't see the right stamp in time. This doesn't happen every once in a while. It happens every day on food, clothing, electronics, building materials, everything. The volume is so enormous that tiny frictions stack into weeks of delay and billions of dollars in cost. And a delay like that isn't just a delay for businesses. It's a delay for whoever is waiting for what's inside the container. Families, stores, supply chains. A missing line of text can ripple further than most people ever think about. Blockchain at its best is basically an attack on the telephone game. Instead of 10 slightly different versions of the same document floating around the world, you create one shared record that everyone sees, and they update it together. It's like ditching the file that may be called final, use this one PDF, and moving into one shared document. If something changes, it changes for everyone. Tokenization is just giving the shared document a digital ticket on chain. So systems track it, move it, and verify it automatically. Now, when a shipment moves from port A to port B, or from a warehouse to a store, the port, the shipping company, customs, and the bank are all reading the same truth, not their own version of it. So that means fewer surprises, fewer holds, and fewer containers full of potato chips in the wrong places. And if you speed up these documents, you also speed up the goods. And if you speed up the goods, you don't just make investors happy anymore. You change how entire economies breathe going forward. So, what is XDC? Most blockchains market themselves like cities or casinos. They're loud, they're fueled by speculation, by memes, or the next hot app. XDC took an entirely different route. XDC is open source, meaning that anyone can build on top of it. It's also EVM compatible layer 1 built for trade and real world assets. And for anyone that is still stabilizing themselves in this world, just breathe. This just means developers who already know how to build on Ethereum can use the same tools here on XDC to build. And the way the network is designed means transactions confirm in a couple seconds and cost a tiny fraction of a penny. More like tapping a contactless card than the process of wiring money. But that's the technical layer. What interests me is the intention behind XDC. The network wants to be the infrastructure that trade finance quietly runs on, the rails underneath the paperwork. And one thing I actually appreciate about XDC is how open the ecosystem feels. If you go to their YouTube channel, they're constantly highlighting the developers that are building on top of the network, the updates, the experiments, the projects that you normally never get to see. Some of the things people are building are genuinely cool, like tokenizing real estate and being able to break it up so that there's fractional ownership. And this all gave me a sense of like what's possible behind the curtain. But it also reminds me of where we still are in the timeline. This isn't the phase where institutions and global markets have full clarity to enter just yet. This is the phase where the groundwork gets built. And later, when the markets finally have rules and confidence, these are the kind of products that I think will draw in people that are looking for real world solutions, not just price swings. I also think it's fair to say some parts of global trade do need to be visible. so markets and regulators can see what's going on. Other parts, like sensitive contact details, cannot sit on a public blockchain forever. XDC uses a hybrid design, a public network that anyone can observe, with the option to spin up more private or permission layers that still connect back to the main chain when needed. It's less crypto rebellion and more how do we plug into the world that actually exists? And I always seem to come back to the same question. Who's actually in the room with this project? So, on the trade side, XDC is not shouting from Twitter threads at all. It's joining the groups that shape how trade works. There's the International Trade and Forfeiting Association, or the ITFA, which is a global network of banks involved in cross-border trade. XDC participates there. There's also the Trade Finance Distribution Initiative, created with the ITFA to help banks turn trade loans into more liquid, investable assets. XDC was the first blockchain ecosystem invited into these spaces. And before we get too excited, this does not mean that every bank switches tomorrow, but it does mean the people designing the future of trade are already testing tokenization on this rail. Currently, in Dubai, physical gold bars and regulated vaults are linked to digital tokens on XDC. 1 token equals 1 gram of gold. The gold is stored, tracked, and audited. Instead of moving paper claims around, you move tokens that represent the gold with verifiable backing. It's not perfect. It's not a total replacement yet, but it's real. And if you're still here and awake, next, there's the financial side. In London, there's a regulated exchange called Archax that focuses on tokenization assets. Earlier this year, they used the XDC network to create digital versions of real money market funds. Basically, this is safe, short-term investment funds that normally live inside big banks. The same kind of short-term investment products that big firms like BlackRock, Fidelity, State Street, and Aberdeen offer. They basically took a real fund and made a digital copy of it so it could move faster on the blockchain. This doesn't mean BlackRock is betting on XDC, but what it does mean is institutional grade products now exist as tokens on this chain. Because some part of the market wants faster settlement and better plumbing. When the quiet, boring financial products move first, the conversation has already shifted. It's shifted past, is crypto real? And into, how do we use this safely? And how, overall, I think this is always the best question, how does this affect me? So, when global supply chains are stretched, systems like this don't just make trade faster. They become the difference between economies stumbling or staying steady. And here's something I didn't fully grasp until recently. Europe already has a full regulatory framework for crypto. It's called MiCA, the Markets and Crypto Assets Regulation. It sets the rules for how tokens are issued, what disclosures are required, how platforms are supervised, how consumers are protected, how all 27 member states stay aligned. Parts of it are already live. And for anyone wondering if we're still early, I think their answer is yes and no. MiCA's final compliance deadline, the one that actually governs exchanges and tokenization providers, hits at the end of December 2025. This is just weeks away at the time of this recording. So, the EU isn't signaling that clarity is coming someday. They're signaling we've reached the phase where crypto has to operate like real financial infrastructure. Most projects are still figuring out how to fit into this. XDC has already gone through a MiCA-style deep dive. On the XDC site, there is a MiCA-compliant white paper, prepared with legal specialists laying out governance, risk, and architecture in the exact same language that regulators expect. This doesn't mean Brussels stamped approved on top of XDC. And before we continue, if you're new here, Brussels matters because it's the center of EU financial rulemaking. It's where MiCA was drafted, debated, and ultimately passed. Nothing at scale in Europe moves without Brussels signing off first. So, what does this mean? What this does mean, is that XDC is already speaking the dialect financial institutions require and will require. So, when we talk about Europe's next wave of adoption, this doesn't feel like if regulation comes someday, that part's done. The question is now, which rails are actually ready to live inside the rule book? So, again, why does this matter to me and maybe to you also? Because we've talked a lot on this channel about money moving to new rails, XRP, stablecoins, CBDCs, tokenized funds. But money doesn't move in a vacuum. It moves with goods, and goods move with documents. If the world is rebuilding the plumbing for documents, and the plumbing is programmable, it changes what's possible for financing, small businesses, and global access. If you reduce friction and risk and trade, you don't just make one token go up anymore. You lower the cost of moving things people actually use. So, the truth is, I did not set out to become the guy who cares about trade finance. And some days my eyes still glaze over when I think about this. Most of my life, these systems were completely invisible. I just knew things showed up on shelves, and sometimes they didn't. But the deeper I go into this space, the more I realize the stories that sound the most boring are often where the biggest shifts are quietly happening. So no, this is not me saying to go all in XDC. This is me saying, if the world is rebuilding its ports and paperwork on chain, I personally want to know which docs exist, who's tied up to them, and how they are being regulated. I'm not here to argue with the loudest voice in the room. I'm here to translate what most people don't yet understand and to map the parts of this transition that are easy to miss if you're only watching the price charts. If this field trip opens something up for you, tap like so it reaches more people. Subscribe if you want to keep following this transition with me. And pass it on to someone who keeps hearing tokenization and has no idea what it looks like in practice. If you want to support this channel directly, you can tip me through the Zaman app or buy me a coffee. Those links are in the description below. Next week, we're coming back to the same question from a different angle. So, if today felt dense, let it sit. Come back, and we'll keep unpacking it. This is Layer 1, and I'm James Harris, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining me.